Today we're reading Star Wars Myths and Fables by George Mann and asking the author some big questions like, why do the Sith have such terrible retirement plans? George has the answer.
The Star Wars Show Book Club is a series where we gather friends and fans to read Star Wars books, examining how they relate to all of the Star Wars films, live-action shows, animated series, comics, and games. Through these stories, we enrich our understanding of the galaxy far, far away.
Hello, Kristin Baver here, ready to step inside a galaxy far, far away with some meta fairy tales from the Star Wars universe. Like the legends of Luke Skywalker, this anthology delivers stories that help us understand how the Jedi, the Sith, and droids might be perceived among the regular denizens of the galaxy. These fables run the gamut from cautionary tales about Tusken Raiders on Tatooine to a dark wraith with some pronounced asthmatic breathing. We explore the perils that befall greedy pirate gangs who tangle with witches, and the fortunes of children who dare to wander Batuu. At the heart of each story is a powerful message about bravery, perseverance, and the power of the Force. Now grab your broom or simply tuck yourself in, and let's meet our book club crew. All right, on our panelists this week, first up we have Teresa Delgado. By day, she's a high school teacher, and by night, the co-host of a trilogy of Star Wars-themed podcasts, including Star Wars Bookworms and Fangirls Going Rogue.
Hi, everybody.
Next up, we have Marc Thompson with a noteworthy career in film, theater, and animation. Our favorite thing about him is the fact that he's narrated over 40 Star Wars audiobooks.
Hey.
And last but not least, comedian and Saturday Night Live alum Bobby Moynihan, who went from Star Wars fan to Star Wars family as the voice of Orka on Star Wars Resistance.
Hi, everybody. So good to be here. Hi, Kristin.
Hello. I said Star Wars like 4 times so far. That's how this show's gonna go.
It's a lot of Star Wars talk. I mean, I feel like the people won't mind it.
They come for the Star Wars, really. Which of these stories would you use to try and keep the kids in your life in line?
Oh my gosh. I would probably... You know what? No, I'm gonna let Mark go first.
Well, yeah, I have 2 boys. They're teenagers now, so they'll kill me for saying this. But the whole time I was reading The Black Spire, I was like, oh, this would be perfect to keep them with me at the amusement park and not wandering off. Like, this is the exact story I need to read them right before we go to Batuu. It would have been perfect. So
That's the reason I let you go first. I had a feeling you would say that. Because that's actually the one I would use for my high school students too. Because, high school students are still inside about, 5-6 years old most of the time, so you kind of need the same tactics, honestly.
I would have to say, for me, it might be the Dark Wraith. For the sole reason, I don't know if it's just now I'm a new dad, but just the idea of be good or else really good at being bad, and then the bad men are going to come get you and recruit you.
I picked Dark Wraith as well because I was like, this one's scaring me a little bit, and I'm an adult, and I know that the Dark Wraith isn't coming for me.
Yeah, one of the coolest single art images in Star Wars ever, and that, in my opinion, is that picture to start that story. All the illustration was great.
Yeah, and I know we want to dive deeper into the actual stories, but before we do that, even because Bobby, you make a great point, I want to make sure we talk about the illustrations, because the work by Grant Griffin in this is just gorgeous. Any other favorites among the illustrations?
I mean, all of them. That one in particular.
You can't pick all of them, Bobby.
I know. I love that one in particular because I like the idea of Darth Vader is such a scary figure anyway, but I love the idea of making him Halloween spooky, the skeleton, he's a monster.
Oh yeah, the ribs.
How you could make him worse and also make him look a little more Ralph McQuarrie. It was great. But I will forever now have that picture now of the witch and the Wookiee, because that's just the coolest concept ever. Shadow Wookiee. I might have to change my Twitter name.
You got the beard for it.
Yeah, right? I definitely do.
Yeah.
Please call me Shadow Wookiee from now.
From now on. Well, for me, I listen to all of my books on audiobook for the podcast so that we can actually do reviews of the audiobooks. So I did this one via audiobook, but then I always have to remember with these, I have to go back and look at the actual art in the book because you miss out on stuff. Another thing you miss out on with audiobooks is spelling of names. You never know how to spell anything. So when I finally did go back and look, I really liked Vengeful Waves and The Wanderer. Those two really stood out to me. But like you guys said, I mean, any of these could be prints on the wall
My favorite
Yeah.
was the Knight and the Dragon, just because when you first see it, it could easily be like a Dungeons and Dragons piece of artwork or cover. But then when you notice the lightsaber, it's like, oh wow, what is this? And it was really, I felt like it embodied the tone of the book overall, and just kind of that mixing of kind of like these old time fairy tales, but seeing Star Wars in a new way through that lens. I was expecting it to maybe be like fairy tales within the Star Wars universe, but then I was like pleasantly surprised where I get like a third of the way through like Knight and Dragon, I'd be like, wait, are they talking about, wait, this is Obi-Wan, oh my gosh, it's Obi-Wan, so it was kind of a cool way to rediscover some of the characters that we know and love. Yeah.
No,
sorry.
I'm just kidding.
But it was a really cool way to kind of rediscover it, and then think about like, wow, that would be kind of the way that we would tell these stories if we were telling them around a campfire, and like, so it was really cool.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really clever that in the same vein as The Legends of Luke Skywalker, which we read earlier in the year, it's canon, but it's not specifically married to things that are happening in the timeline. They never say, hey, it's Obi-Wan. So it's like you think it's Obi-Wan, you're pretty sure it's Obi-Wan. In my headcanon, it's definitely Obi-Wan, but because it never says it, there's some, there's a bit of a question mark, I think, on the end of a lot of these things. But, Bobby, you made a really great observation that, these are just a perfectly succinct, boiled down way of sharing some of those themes that are so essential to Star Wars, allowing you to get your bearings in a place that felt very familiar for I imagine, a lot of us.
Yeah, I really love this story because of that, and I love like all the details I picked up on Luke and Obi-Wan's interaction when he's about to be, taken by the Sand People, because I was like, wait, so like that's why they're so scared when he does that call, and maybe they're taking him to sacrifice him to the dragon, and they didn't learn their lesson, and they're making the same mistake they made before, and it was. I felt like the next time I watch that movie, I'm gonna be like, no way, that's the thing, or at least like you said, in my head canon.
Well, and then one of the things I noticed from the intro of the audiobook and then in the start of the first story, the narrator switches his voice to this narration storytelling, like by a campfire voice. And I was like, wait, is that the same dude? What? And I had to go and look, and I'm like, oh, okay. Alrighty then. And I loved it.
Moving on to Vengeful Waves. This is where it started to get even a little bit darker. I love the lesson on this one, which, my takeaway was essentially possession leads to just more greed, and you have to be more compassionate and kind and more communal in the way you perceive things, or you're just going to keep trying to get more and more and more until it creates a bit of a problem, as it did for these poor folks.
There was something about this one that reminded me of the real world right now. And it freaked me out. I was like, ee! So this one, it really highlighted, like I said, the real world. I mean, it just highlighted all the people that are out there that are trying to do good and trying to be compassionate and just fighting so hard to live in a way that is kind and good, and then just being beaten down by the opposite forces.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you point that out, because when I was reading it at a pretty good clip, and then I got to the end of this story and I was like, I'm going to go for a walk. And it didn't quite occur to me maybe, why that was resonating in quite that way. All right. Anything else? Any other thoughts on Vengeful Waves before I move us forward?
I did like the idea that like the Force could move through not just individuals, but through, nature, and just the wave, like kind of bring balance that way. And that was kind of an interesting thought, and kind of, powerful to think about,
And I think that's something that they don't ever really mention, Mark, but you kind of just always assume is true. But then you get to see it in the story and you're like, I am validated.
Yes.
On to The Wanderer. This feels like the kind of story that Anakin Skywalker got told when he was a little kid. I feel like this is the kind of thing Shmi told him, like tucked him in at night, told him this story. And that's why when he meets Qui-Gon, he's like, hey, you got a laser sword. I saw it on your little poncho there. I would like to be a Jedi too with a laser sword.
That's so cool, because like one of my questions at the end of this was, is the Wanderer Qui-Gon? because it talks about like the chestnut hair, and I was looking for patterns at that point. But like, I like your interpretation better, because it's like that would make it sense why Anakin would be so enamored with him, because he's the embodiment of that story. You know, like that's really cool. I love that.
Well, he does have a green lightsaber, so.
That's what
he does.
Yeah,
he does.
I went straight to like Jedi Mandalorian at first. I was like, oh, this is gonna, like, I don't know who, like, this is just he's such a badass that he just has like an adjective name. I was like, that's gonna be. I was like, I'll take it. I like that. I like those kind of characters where you start at the end and learn all the stuff.
Oh, the Jedi with no name. That's so cool. Yeah, and I love that he's wandering the world, like I think it ends with helping those who cannot help themselves, and I just love that. Like that is such a perfect way to sum up what Jedi are, and you know, that how Jedi are being viewed, at least by some people in the galaxy, is just that they're these wandering people, and they just show up when you need them. And I love that concept and that idea that maybe that's how this story functioned in the galaxy.
Thank you all for joining today. This was super fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was awesome. Thank you.
To get us started, George, I asked the panel this too, and so I want to put the question to you as the writer of Myths and Fables. Which of these stories would you use to try and keep the kids in your life in line?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting one. There's a few of them, really. I think it would probably be the Vader story, the idea of a kind of a boogeyman who comes to destroy things, wipe out your city if you're naughty.
It comes from, it goes without saying that Grant Griffin's illustrations are amazing. How much of the art influenced your writing? And on the flip side, how much of your writing influenced the art?
I was so lucky to work with Grant on the book, and the way it worked is kind of I put the story ideas in, quite detailed story ideas in, and then Grant started work on the artwork. So when I was actually sitting down to write the stories, I was seeing the art coming in, and it kind of became like this feedback loop where I was getting these great images coming in, and the Vader one was exactly that. It came in as I was writing the story, and I was able to then draw inspiration from the way he'd done the artwork back into the story. So it just, the way he tackled it and did that kind of mythological version of Vader, it's just so powerful.
This one comes from a Jason Powell. Was the Wanderer the same person as the Dark Wraith, or simply an anonymous Jedi that was lost in the Purge?
Neither. So it's not the Dark Wraith. The idea with those two stories is they're meant to be the polar opposites, and showing both sides of the Force, how they interact with the same planet and the same people. So just before I actually launched into writing them, we discussed which Jedi it might be. No one's guessed it yet, so I think I should probably sit on that for a little while. It is meant to be a Jedi we know, never mentioned by name in the story, of course.
We talked a little bit about whether or not Qui-Gon was the Wanderer.
Yes, I mean that's the theory. That's the theory. That's what we. Yeah, you got there. You got there. No, that was what we talked about. I mean, whether it is or isn't, again, it's open to interpretation. But when we sat and discussed it, we said, well, it could be Qui-Gon. That's kind of where we went with the story.
And there was a lot of debate about how many of these stories featured characters that we already do know from the galaxy far, far away. Can you confirm whether or not Obi-Wan is the Knight in The Knight and the Dragon?
Yes. Yeah, he's intended to be. Yeah. There's kind of a plausible deniability about the stories in the sense of kind of they're seen through a filter. So something probably happened that's true. But over the years, the stories are now told in a different way. So obviously, in that story, the Krayt Dragon has wings. Well, we know Krayt Dragons don't have wings, but it's the way the story's metamorphosized over time.
This one comes from the Brooding Wookiee. What was your inspiration for the story The Witch and the Wookiee? I'm very interested in brooding on your answer.
The story started with me looking actually at Night Sisters and wanting to do a story about Night Sisters, but knowing obviously that, you know, they've been wiped out. There was a mobile game called Star Wars Uprising. In that game, there was a Night Sister who survived called Shelish, and she had a Wookiee companion called Awachi, and they'd escaped. And I thought, right, here is an opportunity to bring those characters back. So she's a kind of an ex-Night Sister, if you like, a survivor.
Comes from a Jason Powell. Regarding Gaze of Stone, why do the Sith have such terrible retirement plans? I am never applying to work for them.
I suppose it's a bit more exciting than having a pension, isn't it?
I mean, you create excitement, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'd sign up for it, really, to be honest, to train someone whose sole purpose is to wipe me out later down the line. But
I mean, it would probably inspire you to be your best.
certainly would.
This one comes from a Jason Powell. Do you believe that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice?
I'd like to think so. I think there's kind of an underpinning in this in Star Wars about it's a myth. I mean, Star Wars is a myth. That's kind of what I think George Lucas originally set out to do, is to tell a mythological tale. And you look at all those classic stories, the reason those stories exist essentially is because people learn from them. It's a way of communicating lessons, moral behaviors, and hope. And I think there's a message of hope at the heart of Star Wars. So I like to think that, for me, hope and justice are two things that go very closely together. So I do like to think that it's a just universe, and in time everything bounces, like the Force, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, George. This has been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you who read along and sent in your questions. That's it for this year, but the Star Wars Show Book Club will return in 2021 with monthly meetings, special guests, and new author interviews. Until then, may the Force be with you.